I met Sarah at the church we both attended. We were still teenagers. I was 16 and she was 15. We exchanged shy glances during Mass, and over time, we began attending different church events together as volunteers. It was through these events that we grew closer, eventually starting to date. Sarah was from a strong, traditional family, and because of that, I knew I had to be respectful and show her family that my intentions were serious. I asked her father for her hand in marriage, and after 3 years of dating, we tied the knot. Our families had grown close over the years, and everything in our life seemed to be falling into place. We decided to wait a few years before having our first child. I wanted to finish college, secure a job, and buy a house before bringing a child into the world. Sarah and I were always methodical, planning every step carefully, and this approach helped us build a life of stability. While Sarah took care of the house, I worked hard to support us. Our relationship was solid. I can't even remember the last time we fought. I made sure Sarah felt comfortable and independent. She had a credit card added to mine, and I always kept some cash around for her, just in case she needed something. I thought this was a fair arrangement since she managed the house and took care of me, while I worked outside. I graduated in 2015, and that same year, Sarah and I bought our first home. My father helped with a substantial contribution, and it felt like we were finally setting our lives up. That year, we made the decision to try for a baby. Our families were ecstatic, and so were we. Sarah stopped using birth control, and we knew it might take time. But when months went by and she still wasn't pregnant, we decided to see a doctor. I took some tests to rule out any issues on my end, and everything came back fine. Sarah had to take some prescribed medications and vitamins to help with her fertility, and after almost a year, we finally got the good news. Sarah was pregnant. Our excitement was overwhelming, and our families couldn't wait for the baby to arrive. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The pregnancy was smooth, but I became increasingly worried. Those months felt like the longest of my life. I was so consumed with anxiety that I wouldn't let Sarah do anything. I hired help to clean the house, making sure she could rest and watch TV, her favorite thing to do. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the big day came. But there were complications. Sarah went into labor early, and the baby was born at 8 months. While the baby was healthy, Sarah's health started to decline rapidly. I will never forget that moment. The doctors rushed her away after she suffered a cardiac arrest in the delivery room. Despite their best efforts, she didn't make it. Suddenly, my joy at becoming a father was overshadowed by the loss of the woman I loved. The pain was unbearable, and I found myself questioning everything, including my faith. I couldn't understand why this happened. The first 2 months were the hardest. The house felt so empty, and Sarah's things, the little reminders of her, were everywhere, haunting me. My only solace was my baby boy, whom I named Noah. He was my reason to keep going, even though I couldn't stop grieving for Sarah. As Noah grew, however, something felt off. I began to notice how different he looked from both Sarah and me. His skin tone, hair, and eyes didn't match ours at all. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't help but notice the looks from family and friends, the whispers that followed us. By the time Noah turned 5 months old, I decided to take a DNA test. What I discovered shocked me. Noah wasn't my biological child. I remember coming home, still in shock, calling my mother and my mother-in-law to tell them the news. My mom was devastated, crying uncontrollably. But my mother-in-law, on the other hand, was not surprised. She immediately dismissed the test as unreliable and insisted I was mistaken. She defended Sarah, claiming that there was no way Sarah would ever cheat on me. At first, I tried to push through and keep living with Noah, but over time, it became impossible. Every time I looked at him, the image of his innocent face reminded me of the bitter truth. I couldn't look at him the same way I once had. The love I once had for him slowly faded, and it was replaced by confusion and resentment. The bond we shared as father and son had been built on a lie, and now it felt like a stranger stood before me in my own home. His smile, his laugh, even his cries, somehow felt alien to me. It wasn't his fault, of course, but I couldn't shake the weight of the betrayal that surrounded his very existence. My mother-in-law continued to come around, insisting I keep quiet about the paternity, urging me to act like everything was normal. She begged me to let it go, as though it was something I could just erase from my mind. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend anymore. I was drowning in a sea of hurt and anger. I started drinking to numb the pain, something I had never done before, something I never thought I would. I sank deeper into depression, my work started to slip, and I had to take time off just to cope. I felt like I was unraveling, unable to escape the pain that seemed to follow me everywhere. I couldn't stop replaying every moment with Sarah, wondering how I could have missed the signs, questioning everything I thought I knew about our life together. It was as though I was living a lie that had been constructed over years, and now shattered in the harshest of ways. Eventually, I reached out to my mother-in-law and told her, with as much resolve as I could muster, that I couldn't keep Noah. The words were difficult to say, but I knew I had no choice. She reacted with anger, guilt-tripping me, accusing me of abandoning my own son. She threatened me with everything she could, from ruining my reputation to calling me a coward for not accepting him. She used every method in her arsenal to convince me to change my mind, but I couldn't be swayed. I was exhausted emotionally and physically. I told her that if no one else would care for Noah, I would put him up for adoption. After much resistance, after countless calls and arguments, she finally agreed to take him in. It wasn't easy to make that decision. It felt like I was tearing apart a part of myself. I sold my house to start fresh, hoping that removing myself from the environment we had built together might help me heal. I stopped drinking, trying to get back on track with my life, but even then, I knew I was far from healed. My heart was still broken, and my mind was still clouded with confusion. There were so many questions and so few answers. I had to leave everything behind, but even in a new place, the memories of what had happened haunted me. I reached out to my manager at work, asking for a transfer to a different branch in another state. I couldn't stay in Cleveland, Ohio. Every street, every corner seemed to remind me of the life I thought I had, the life that was now destroyed. So I moved to Columbus, hoping the change in scenery would give me a sense of peace. But it didn't. The judgment from others was overwhelming. The whispers, the sideways glances, people called me a monster. They labeled me as the man who had abandoned his own son, a man who couldn't even be bothered to raise a child. My name was tarnished, and the guilt of being associated with Sarah's betrayal seemed to follow me wherever I went. What frustrated me the most was that no one seemed to blame Sarah. She was gone, but it felt like she was beyond reproach. Everyone had their sympathy for her, even though she was the one who had deceived me, the one who had shattered everything we built. Months later, I discovered who Noah's real father was. The truth began to trickle out when the man went after his son, claiming his right as a father. His name was Mark, and I recognized him. He was the brother of one of Sarah's close friends, a woman named Linda. Sarah wasn't the type to go out often, but she always found time to visit Linda. And now I understood why. I even learned that Sarah had spent the night at Linda's place a few times while I was away on business trips. I had no idea. I trusted her. I never questioned her loyalty. But now I saw the truth that had been hidden from me all along. Finally, justice was being served. It wasn't just a sense of revenge, but a bittersweet sense of closure. Sarah's reputation, once perfect in the eyes of everyone, was forever tarnished. Though she wasn't alive to face the consequences, her mother had to bear the weight of the shame. I had to admit that in the end, Mark stepping up to raise Noah was a huge relief for me. I knew I could never be the father that Noah needed, not after everything that had happened. While Noah was innocent in all of this, so was I. We were both victims of Sarah's betrayal, and as much as it hurt, I had to come to terms with the fact that sometimes there are no happy endings, only painful truths and the hope that one day we might find peace in the aftermath. If you have a similar story, share it with us in the comments if you'd like me to narrate it. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.